The Bellator cage returns to the Mohegan Sun Friday night with a compelling title fight at middleweight. Gegard Mousasi, the current king at 185, has had one of the most decorated MMA careers in history, and nearly 60 pro fights in, he hasn't slowed down a bit and is aging like a fine wine.
Mousasi, one of the greatest, does it again!
While Mousasi is the justifiable favorite against unbeaten #1 contender Johnny Eblen, the human cheat code isn't merely happy to be here. He's coming for the gold.
Madrid goes down and Madrid's in trouble. Johnny Eblen.
There's the age-old saying in combat sports that styles make fights. Mousasi has seen every style and is as crafty as they come in MMA. But Eblen has been studying the champ and sees holes in his game.
I think I match up well with Mousasi. I think I'm just a younger version of him, pretty much. I expect to do better than him, honestly, in my career.
Will the undefeated American shock the world? Or will the belt stay in the Netherlands with the dominant champion? We're going to find out Friday night, only on Showtime.
All right, here is the main card for you for Bellator 282 from Mohegan Sun. And can I just say that if you've spent nearly 20 years in MMA and you're still going strong, that is very, very impressive. Gegard Mousasi, 6 world titles. He's taken that 4-fight win streak up against the human cheat code. Leandro Higo and rising star Danny Sabatello also on the card. And we get a Bellator MMA Bantamweight World Grand Prix quarterfinal between Magomedov and Barsola. The winner's one step closer to the $1 million prize. All right, we're getting set for the weigh-ins here on CBS Sports HQ. Just prior to that, let's bring in our morning combat guys, Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas. BC, how excited are you for this particular card?
Hugely excited. And in many ways, Jeremy, that, of course, is for that $1 million grand prize that you talked about, the quarterfinals of the Bantamweight World Grand Prix. But something Luke and I both talked about in Morning Combat this week, you really can't sleep on this middleweight title main event. It really feels like a potential crossroads fight. Is Johnny Eblen, who's unbeaten overall, coming on? Or is the legend Gegard Mousasi have one more title defense on his already Hall of Fame career at age 36? He's been on such an impressive run. Eblen has shown you such plus ability on this current win streak that we have a real showdown come Friday night at the Mohegan Sun to find out who's the best in Bellator at 185 pounds.
Yeah, I echo everything BC said there. I would add another context. I've said this before, but it really does bear repeating. 135 pounds isn't merely good in Bellator, it's good worldwide. And so they've got a good collection, a great collection, in fact, of some of the best 135-pounders in the world. It is stacked top to bottom. And I got to say, a lot of folks know some of the bigger names. Obviously, champion Sergio Pettis, who's not in the tournament, but still they know who he is. Nevertheless, Danny Sabatello has announced himself. He is on fire, but he has a huge challenge in Leandro Higo. Enrique Barzola tasted UFC, had some ups, had some downs, has really recommitted himself. He has a tough fight against Magomed Magomedov, who's another guy who's kind of like a dark horse candidate, maybe to win the whole thing. Plus, at the top, you've got a main event with someone who's undefeated, which is amazing, but look at the disparity in the amount of competition experience they have. Yet, the odds are fairly close-ish. This is a great card on Friday night at the Mohegan Sun.
Yeah, and when you look at Mousasi, I mean, almost 20 years in MMA, 6 world titles. I mean, going for his 50th win. Luke, when you look at that resume, going for 50 wins, what does that mean to you in terms of his MMA career?
Truly, truly rare. I mean, very rare. Most fighters, including even elite ones, get to 20 wins, sometimes 30. To get to your 50th win is insane. And what it tells you is a couple of things. Number one, he started young and had success young. This wasn't a guy that had to figure it out late into his 20s, maybe at 30 or in his early 30s, which, by the way, a lot of very good fighters do. He has been good at a high level basically since the word go. The other thing I would say is, Johnny Eblen represents a very real and sincere threat. I do not want to diminish that. But if you just look at who Gegard Mousasi has fought, he's got Hall of Famers up and down that resume. He has seen multiple eras, frankly, of MMA. He competed in MMA when it wasn't even called MMA, it was called NHB. That's how long in the tooth he is, and yet he is not physically outside of his prime. He is not washed. He is not past it. It is an uphill climb for Johnny Eblen, but that guy, full of confidence.
You know, to echo what Luke said about Gegard's current status here at age 36, there's reason to believe we might be looking at the best we've ever seen from this future Hall of Famer. And that can sound, of course, like a little bit of hyperbole. We've seen him win a title in Strikeforce. He's a 2-time Bellator world champion. But something happened in Mousasi's last title defense against unbeaten Austin Vanderford. That something, of course, was a quick and destructive finish. But it was Mousasi on the microphone afterwards saying, look, I never talk trash. I never say things I don't believe. This is the first time in my life I believe, though, that I'm the best middleweight in the world. To see an already accomplished fighter on the verge of 50 wins, Hall of Fame resume, really come into his own at this age. Look, it gives us washed fellas a little bit of resurgent hope right there to get back out on the hardwood or whatever sport we call home recreationally. But I think it shows you that the mindset, the efficiency, the IQ. We already knew physically how talented Mousasi was, but he also got through some hiccups. He lost his title a couple years back, won it back by a close decision, is on a nice run right now. In fact, how nice is the run? How about 12-1 over his last 13 fights? That goes back to 2015. That covers time in UFC and Bellator. You are watching, you hate to use the term, a living legend. That's very much the case in Mousasi. Now the question becomes, is this living legend going to pass this next test against a guy who doesn't know how to lose, in Eblen, who can do some things on the ground when it comes to mixed martial arts?
And Eblen coming in with that undefeated record. Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas going to catch up with you in a couple of minutes after we experience the weigh-in. First, let's take another look at that main card. We talk about Gegard Mousasi, Johnny Eblen. That is your main event, the middleweight title bout. As mentioned, Mousasi going for his 50th victory in MMA. Eblen undefeated 11-0. Leandro Ego and rising star Danny Sabatello also on the card. And we get a Bellator MMA Bantamweight World Grand Prix quarterfinal between Magomed Magomedov and Enrique Barsola. You heard BC mention it. $1 million prize on the line as they go through the quarterfinals, heading towards the final for that $1 million prize. All right, we are ready for the weigh-ins. Bellator 282. Let's go out to Mohegan Sun.
A 4-fight main card featuring 3 of those 4 fights scheduled for 5 rounds and featuring in the main event the Middleweight World Championship. Again, live on Showtime, starting off 9 o'clock in the East, 6 o'clock on the West Coast. We kick it off with welterweights. Kane versus Ward. Your first fighter to the scale, Cassius Killer Kane. In his Bellator debut out of Omaha by way of Winside, Nebraska, 12-7 as a pro, 169.75. 169.75, the official weight. And now we welcome back to the scale from New London, Connecticut, Irish, Brendan Ward. 15-6 as a professional, coming off a round 2 TKO victory in his return. Now on the scale, 171 pounds even. 171 for Ward. Tomorrow night, live on Showtime from Mohegan Sun Arena. We kick it off here with welterweights. 9 o'clock in the East, 6 in the West. Cassius Killer Kane, Irish, Brendan Ward. And now we go to the $1 million Bantamweight World Grand Prix. We conclude the quarterfinal round with 2 fights tomorrow night. Here's your first matchup. Barzola versus Magomedov. Your first fighter to the scale, Enrique El Fuerte Barzola. The Peruvian, successful in his wild card round fight at Bellator 278 in April. That unanimous decision victory gained him entry to the World Grand Prix. And tomorrow night's quarterfinal round, 18-5-2 as a pro. His official weight, 135 on the mark. 135 pounds even. And now we welcome the number 4 ranked bantamweight Magomed Tiger Magomedov. In his quarterfinal round contest, 18-2 as a pro, 135 on the mark, his weight. Both fighters, 135 even. The third overall quarterfinal round fight, the first tomorrow night, is set. The winner advancing to the semifinal round in the $1 million Bantamweight World Grand Prix. Enrique El Fuerte Barzola Magomed Tiger Magomedov. Up next, your fourth and final fight in the quarterfinal round of the Bantamweight World Grand Prix. It'll be Sabatello versus Ego. Your first fighter to the scale, the Italian gangster, Danny Sabatello. At 12-1 as a pro, the winner in his wild card round fight by unanimous decision brings him to the scale. His official weight, 134.75. For the fighter out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, by way of Chicago, 134 3/4 pounds. And now his opponent, do Brasil, Leandro Alter Ego. Out of Mosoro, Rio Grande do Norte, Brazil, 21-5 as a pro. And on the scale, exactly the same, 134 3/4 pounds. Words exchanged for months, and finally the two fighters set to square off, not here on stage, but tomorrow night inside the cage. It'll be your fourth and final final round contest in the $1 million Bantamweight World Grand Prix. Sabatello versus Ego. And now we go to the main event of the evening. 5-minute rounds for the Bellator Middleweight World Championship. We welcome first the fast-rising middleweight contender, the undefeated challenger, Johnny, the human cheat code, Eblen. Out of Coconut Creek by way of Kansas City, 11-0 on the scale. The challenger, 185 on the mark. 185 even for Eblen. And now we welcome the living and still fighting legend, one of MMA's all-time greatest. Please welcome the defending Bellator middleweight world champion, Gegard Mousasi. Official weight, 185 pounds for Mousasi out of Amsterdam, Netherlands, 49-7-2. 40 finishes to his credit. Mousasi making his third defense after regaining that Bellator middleweight strap. Eblen in his first ever world title fight, putting his undefeated record on the line. There it is. Your main event is set for middleweight gold. Mousasi versus Eblen. It's all taking place tomorrow night right here at Mohegan Sun. Tickets still available. Box office right over here. Bellator.com for details, or write to Ticketmaster.com for tickets. 9 o'clock live on Showtime for the main card. 6 o'clock for the prelim start time live on YouTube. With that, we thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night for Bellator 282 live on Showtime.
All right, so everybody made weight. Let's talk about Bellator 282 and welcome in our fight guys, Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell. Guys, I guess I'll just start by asking, we saw some jawing with Ego and Sabatello back and forth, and then we have Mousasi who just kind of, just strolls up. He's got the hat on, just relaxed, does the weigh-in, does the thing. He seems pretty chill at this point, BC.
Yeah, I mean, he's been here, done that so many times in so many organizations that, he can rock a dad hat like that with the type of record that we're talking about and the names on his resume. But I like that you highlighted the tension there between Leandro Higo and Danny Sabatello. They'll be taking part in the quarterfinal round of this Bellator Bantamweight World Grand Prix that we talked about. But if you don't know about Danny Sabatello, it's time to wise up. Yes, he can talk himself onto your screen and in the building with that 80s pro wrestling shtick he's got going. But the thing he'll tell you, and he talked to Luke Thomas this week on Morning Combat, is it's not a shtick. He's just a fired up competitor who is all in at all times. He says when he fights you, he hates you. And he can back it up, too, on the ground. A decorated amateur wrestler at the University of Purdue. He has made this transition to the pros, joining American Top Team in South Florida. You know that term? He wants all the smoke. This guy wants the smoke, the factories, the atmosphere. He wants it all. You got to tune in Friday night, even just for the Sabatello show alone.
One little quick note I might throw on there is about that main event with Gegard Mousasi. You're right. He looked as comfortable could be because he's done this, as BC said, a million times to this point. But that has gotten him in trouble in the past. I'm very curious to see exactly how much of a threat he sees as Johnny Eblen, because remember, this might be been there, done that for Mousasi, but for Johnny Eblen, he's not just undefeated. This is the biggest moment, not just of his fighting career, of his athletic life. This would be the most prestigious title he's ever won. I guarantee no matter where Mousasi is, Eblen is dialed in.
Okay, so LT, I mean, you're a little concerned at the fact that he's kind of just so kind of lackadaisical about it at this point.
Oh, I wouldn't say concerned, but I'll say this. How about curious? I am curious because, listen, there's no denying the experience gap, as we stated, was and is incredible. This will only be Eblen's 12th fight. If you go 12 fights ago and remove that from Mousasi's record, he still had, I think, 40-something fights. I mean, that's how far into this career he is. So he has earned the right to not be jittery and nervous all the time or agitated or angry at his opponents. But even he has said there have been times in his career when he didn't necessarily think the opponent had all that much for him because he kind of looked past him because been there, done that, and it kind of bit him in the end. It will be interesting to see if he can take that refocus that he has, that you saw in that Vanderford fight, and then apply it here again to Johnny Eblen.
Yeah, Luke, I think ultimately what you're saying is we can't sleep on Eblen. Mousasi can't sleep on Eblen. The odds makers aren't. And why? Not just because of that unbeaten record, but the physicality. A good amateur wrestling background at Missouri, but has transitioned that so well to the pros. He's got a motor on him. He's confident. And each step along the journey, including his #1 contender victory over John Salter to get this title shot, Eblen has been impressive. Now, wrestling is something we've seen Mousasi use more of in recent fights. Been very efficient offensively to take control and hold it there. How will he do on the ground against a guy whose calling card is there? It's one of the themes to look at in Friday's main event.
Yeah, you see Mousasi's odds there, -270. In terms of the tail of the tape, Mousasi has the height. He has the reach advantage on Eblen. You guys have talked about the experience difference between the two. I mean, going for his 50th win, 28 knockouts, a dozen submissions. But in Eblen, as you mentioned, the human cheat code has not lost a fight. A perfect 11-0 in Bellator coming in. And we are now happy to also have the middleweight champion, Gegard Mousasi, along with us here on CBS Sports HQ. Gegard, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
One of our soccer analysts is Dutch, and he always says, if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much.
You ain't much.
You've been everything throughout your career, Gegard, going for your 50th MMA win. What would that win mean to you, given what you've already accomplished in the sport?
Absolutely nothing. I'm here to fight another opponent. Yeah, I don't know. I'm coming here to finish him.
Gegard, curious, to what extent does Johnny Eblen represent anything new for you? You're at this point where you've got nearly 60 pro fights. Is Eblen kind of been there, done that, or is there something more to the story?
Well, I think the last two opponents were wrestlers. He will do the same, try to hold me, take me down. But I think I'm too good for that. I've seen it all. There's no area where he's stand out. Of course, his wrestling is good, but nothing I haven't seen and nothing that I don't think I can handle. But it's a fight, but he's gonna lose.
Gegard, you look very calm standing across from Eblen, as you always do, but I did see some quotes from you this week about a tough weight cut, maybe 24 hours to cut 24 pounds. How much of that was realistic, and how difficult was this?
Well, I had a tough weight cut, but no issues. I'm already dehydrated, and I'm going to dehydrate even more. So I'm going to be just fine fight week, and I'm going to kill him. Not kill him, finish him.
Finish him sounds more PC. Yeah, but Gegard, we talked about you going for the 50th win. You're now being called a living legend, and by the way, it's rightfully so. But you're still the champion. You're still taking on all comers. Are you comfortable with all the adulation you've received? It seemed to be a bubbling point the last year.
Yeah, I think at my best, I think I always been in the top, but there was never a time that I looked the parts that I looked in not beatable, but I had losses, so people always look at that. But from now on, it's going to be all smashing and winning. So I'm not worried. I'm going to live at the end of my career all wins and all KOs.
Gegard, thanks for hopping on with us here on CBS Sports HQ. Best of luck against Johnny Eblen on Friday night.
Thank you, TV Land. Bye-bye.
He is rather relaxed. He's looking forward to it in terms of the tail of the tape. I mean, we mentioned he's got the height and the reach advantage on Eblen. He may have a psychological advantage as well. I mean, he's very relaxed going into this. He doesn't seem to be too concerned. He says, hey, I've seen it all before. I've been able to handle it. I don't think he's going to present to me something that I can't handle. 28 knockouts, a dozen submissions, but in Eblen, we mentioned 11-0, has not lost in Bellator MMA coming into this one. All right, so let's pick up this fight with LT and BC. I mean, BC, you heard him there talking about, that he's seen all of this before. He seems very relaxed. LT, you said maybe there was a little bit of curiosity in terms of his attitude based on the chat that we've just had with him. I mean, what do you think about him at this point, LT?
Listen, here's the other side of the coin to the other idea that I previously presented, right? So one version was the one I said before, which was, could it be that he has so much confidence and so much adulation that he hasn't fully taken into account what he's up against? That is one possible interpretation. The other one is, what situation would give Mousasi the best ability to win? Like, what is the best condition under which he could thrive? And the answer there would be calm, cool, and collected. Like, if you're agitated, if you're angry, yes, sometimes at certain levels of the game that can propel you. But this is the championship level. This is the main event level. This is the legacy level. If you're going to be in those, I don't know that you would want to be too far in one direction, but maybe sort of calm, cool, and collected in the way that we've seen, that could also propel his performance. I would say, listen, in the end, some of the things that we talk about are important and they're relevant. But the most important thing that everyone should take home is skills win fights. That is what ultimately usually determines the vast majority of contests, from the regional level to the very highest level. And I would say overall, Mousasi certainly is the more talented one, as we've talked about, more experienced. The real X factor here is Johnny Eblen believes his wrestling will be dominant, that his ground and pound will be dominant. Is the skill differential in that particular department in Eblen's favor? We're going to find out tomorrow night.
Indeed, Luke. It is interesting from a, armchair psychologist standpoint. I don't believe I've ever seen Mousasi that loose, almost talking a little trash, saying from here on out, I'm going to smash everyone that comes across me. It's good to see him have this victory lap of sorts to finally get that legend tag on him, even though, look, Mousasi's been a champion in Bellator twice, Strikeforce, but did he ever have that breakthrough viral moment? You can argue he hasn't. He seems to be, I don't want to say full of himself, but operating it on all cylinders, not scared about talk of a hard weight cut, not scared about the credentials of his opponent. Let's see what happens come Friday night, because this is going to be a real fight, and I think at the very least the betting odds show you that.
Yeah, Gegard is the favorite. You see the numbers there, minus 270. He's on a heater, going for his 5th win in a row, 50th in his career. LT, who are you picking?
Well, I had the genius pick of Vanderford in the last fight, and that blew up in my face substantially. So I'm going to right that wrong and pick Mousasi. However, I will point out something. If you're looking at that one blemish that you saw on the graphic and the one that BC pointed to previously, that was Rafael Lovato Jr., who won that fight, with grappling. That's why I kind of keep going back to it. Now, the real big caveat to that is that Lovato Jr. is perhaps the best American to ever compete in the world level of jiu-jitsu ever. A world champion in the black belt division, a phenomenal guy who can mix both grappling and wrestling and, of course, jiu-jitsu submissions. Eblen is not quite that guy, not by style, not by accomplishment. So I'm going to pick Mousasi for that reason. But I will say there's been a lot of online chatter that Eblen has no chance. He's going to get destroyed. And, of course, that's certainly possible. It's a fist fight. Anything can happen. I actually think he's going to far exceed some of the expectations that are out there for him.
Yeah, when I look at this fight, I think Mousasi's too skilled across the board. The experience gap there is huge, as we talked about. But Eblen does seem to be a freight train coming on in this moment. What will that mean for the fight? I think the safe bet is still Mousasi. I like him by decision. I do think, though, there's going to be moments here, maybe not moments of danger, but moments where Mousasi is going to have to make sure, from the judge's standpoint, that he is in control of the proceedings here. Why I say that? A little bit of a scoring hullabaloo of late in mixed martial arts in terms of the definition of the law, in terms of damage and how judges score it, to what you're seeing in grappling. We've just seen recently in a Bellator interim welterweight title bout where MVP Michael Venom Page seemed to control things on the feet, but was held down a lot against Logan Storley. Turned out to be a somewhat controversial decision loss for Page. For Mousasi, he's going to have to be careful. We know that Eblen likes to take the fight to the ground. He's very strong and tough in top position. Mousasi's going to have to make sure that if he can get the cleaner exchanges in the striking, that there's enough there for the judges to work with, because I see this one going late, and I see this one being competitive throughout. There's just too many ways, though, for Mousasi to adjust, adapt, survive, and ultimately advance.
All right, let's look at the entirety of that main card. BC, which fight is the best bet for you?
Look, when I look at this, Magomedov was my dark horse coming into this tournament from the beginning. Now you're telling me that the champion Sergio Pettis is out with an injury. True. Now you're telling me that Kyoji Horiguchi, maybe the favorite coming in, also came up empty to a defeat. No easy challenge in Enrique Barzola. Luke mentioned it. Got experience all over the globe. And although the betting odds are close right here, probably because of that experience, Magomedov is a next-level grappler with intention to grind you down to the mat and take care of you. Yes, we saw him lose to Rafion Stotts in a very big step-up position in a competitive 3-round fight, but look for him to adjust from that, do what he does well. I think this right now is Magomedov's bracket to win when it comes to $1 million and the title of Bellator World Champion. It won't be easy. This fight won't be easy, but back Magomedov. He has the goods.
Every time I come on CBS Sports HQ, Hakeem Dermish kills me because I always go heavy on the chalk, and I'm going to go heavy on the chalk here as well. Danny Sabatello, you saw the odds. I think he's a minus 600 or so favorite, maybe even higher than that. Okay, you're like, well, that's obviously the best bet. But here's the thing I just really want to drive home. When he started in this tournament, he was unranked. Now he is number 9. The idea that this guy was obviously picked to go very far from the word go is simply not true. The reason why people are hopping onto his bandwagon now is, yes, of course, he's banging the pots and pans and he makes a lot of noise and he insults his opponents and all that kind of stuff, and the fans love that. But the other part that you cannot lose sight of is this guy was a 3-time national qualifier at Division I program in Purdue. He is a Boilermaker through and through, and not only that, he has suffocating control, absolutely phenomenal cardio conditioning, right? Strong for the weight class, and trains with ATT. The guys in his corner are like Hall of Famers front to back. So he has a great pedigree. He's got a great team. He's super prepared. He has an outstanding skill set and all the confidence in the world. This guy, I think, is going to go very far.
And he puts on a good show. There are our fight guys, Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell, looking ahead to Bellator 282 on Friday night at Mohegan Sun. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Nice catching up with you. In terms of the preliminaries, let's take a look at those. Always electric. This time will be no different. They get underway at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. 3 lightweight bouts, 3 featherweight bouts, 2 middleweight fights, and a flyweight for your enjoyment in terms of the preliminaries. Then the main card for Bellator 282. Gegard Mousasi, his 6 world titles, take that 4-fight win streak up against the human cheat code, 11-0 Johnny Eblen. Leandro Ego and rising star Danny Sabatello. Sabatello a huge favorite also on this card. And we get a Bellator MMA Bantamweight World Grand Prix quarterfinal between Magomedov and Barzola. The winner one step closer to that $1 million prize.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.